We have arrived at episode 6, which could possibly be the last episode of the 0 to KSM challenge, where I am trying to go from a brand new level 70 balance druid to reaching Keystone Master. To do this, I will have to get my character set up, geared, and work my way up with only pugs. In the last episode, we crafted more Shadowflame gear and opened up our vault for a new trinket from Underrot. After that, we started our final push towards 2000 Raider.io score in Mythic Plus. Most of these were done in the 13 to 15 range on Tyrannical Week. This week being Fortified Week, it means that we should be able to really push some keys, maybe even more so than last week. With this possibly being the end of our adventure to KSM, you might want to watch how we got here. Well, if that's the case, then you're in luck. If you click the card in the top right hand corner of your screen, it will take you to a playlist that has every episode in one place. So if you guys remember in the last episode, I asked for your feedback in regards to if you want me to continue this challenge towards Keystone Hero, start a new challenge on a different class, or any other video ideas. I want to say thank you to everyone who gave me their feedback. I really appreciate it. The resounding answer was to continue this challenge towards Keystone Hero, so that is exactly what I'm going to do. The only thing I need to figure out is if I title the new episodes 0 to Keystone Hero episode 7, or if I start at episode 1 again. Let me know in the comments which episode of this series you enjoyed most, and be sure to subscribe so that you are here when we embark on our journey to Keystone Hero. The goals for today's video is very simple. We want to do as many Mythic Plus dungeons as it requires to get Keystone Master to complete our challenge of 0 to KSM on this balance druid. Once we're done doing that, we will then upgrade our gear to compare where we were at the start of this challenge versus the end. Alright, it is time to open up our vault. Now, our gear to start up this video is actually not too bad. I think the biggest upgrade we could see would be an Iridius fragment. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's just a really good trinket. Other than that, maybe better bracers, I think would also be another good option, but let's open our vault and see what we get. Ooh, okay. I do know this necklace is very good. Oh, okay. And a weapon or tier. Wow. With indestructible. Wow, this is a very good vault. Holy crap. Okay, I'm gonna run some sims, but this is really good. Okay, so I think I finally made my decision. I think I'm gonna go with the weapon. The reason for that is I think this helmet, if I do a heroic run or if I do it a few weeks in a row, I'm pretty sure I could get this. I don't think it'll be that hard. The weapon is very good. It's the biggest increase out of all the items right now. And I did a sim, and if I compare it to my current weapon, if I was to upgrade just the weapon to 447, it's only 0.1% worse once this is maxed out at 441. So technically, yes, that 0.1% I would be losing, you could say. And it would be even bigger because this offhand, I would craft one and then up that to 447 too. The only thing is, that is very far away, as I would need 8 aspect crests to upgrade both of them, plus however many aspect crests to upgrade my boots, my belt, my ring, another ring that I might make, you know, etc., etc. So I think we could come across another necklace. This is a very good necklace, but as you can see, I gain a lot of mastery, 378. When if I gain more than what, just around 300, I will be at the cap for mastery, which means I'd have to change up my gems a little bit and be kind of careful with getting any more mastery, because once you're over this limit, you actually don't get as much as you think you're getting. You enter a penalty zone. So because of that, I think I'm going to take the weapon. I've been like going back and forth on this for way too long now. We got a plus 15 vortex pinnacle, so who knows, maybe we'll get the necklace to drop from there. But yeah, I think this is the better choice. This puts us at item level 424. This weapon is good. It's not the best in slot from dungeon. That would more likely be the one from Braconite Hollow. But I think this makes us a little bit more balanced so that we're not going over the mastery cap. Now that we have gotten our reward from the Great Vault, I want to check out the affixes that we'll be dealing with this week. We do have Fortified, which I've talked about a few times now, but I'll do a recap for anyone that missed it. Non-boss enemies have 20% more health and deal up to 30% increased damage. This affix is generally considered easier to push high keys with compared to Tyrannical. The biggest problems are usually the mini-boss type enemies in, for example, Braconite Hollow or Halls of Infusion. Next up is Entangling, which is also nothing new. Whenever you are in combat, there will be a vine that will slow your movement speed, and you need to run out of the circle to break this vine, or else you'll get stunned if you wait too long. Finally, we have Bolstering, which is definitely the most dangerous of the affixes this week. When a mob dies, it will temporarily empower nearby enemies, which increases their damage by 20%, and these do stack with each other. If you accidentally pull mobs while a previous pack is low, that whole new pack will be very dangerous. As you can see later on in this episode, bolstering is really hard for pugs to deal with. Before we hop into some Mythic Plus, I want to get some more consumables as we used up pretty much all of them in our last video. To start off this episode, our Raider.io score is at 1,749, so we will need 251 score to reach Keystone Master. First up, we have my very own plus 15 Vortex Pinnacle. I would hope to get the necklace that we saw in our vault from the end of the dungeon, but as you will see, better gear wouldn't be necessary for us to reach Keystone Master. We decided as a group to go for a big first pull since it isn't Tyrannical week, so doing bosses without Lust is usually not too hard. We popped Lust on the first pull and grabbed lots of mobs. This dungeon was actually really fun. I was doing really good damage the whole time. The tank was positioning well and doing nice pulls. Our healer was also a standout who also did a really good job. I mentioned in the previous video that when tanking the dragon boss, it is crucial to keep it in the middle of the room. This way, your casters and healers can have enough space to get with the way that the wind is blowing whenever it changes. The only big hurdle mob-wise is the few trash packs before the final boss, especially on fortified weeks. These mobs have lots of HP, do lots of damage, mainly from the channeled lightning ability, and requires lots of interrupts. Here you can see just how powerful bolstering is. The first crashing stone cast goes off, which is a group-wide AoE. This does about half of our health with a few bolstering sacks, but then right before the next one, a mob dies and bolsters the caster. This brings me to 10% HP and kills our augmentation evoker. Luckily, it is fortified week, so the final boss doesn't give us too much trouble, and everybody knew the mechanics. We got a 2 chest and plus 48 score, so only 200 more score to go. This did upgrade our key to a plus 17 underrot. The keys were pretty slow around this time, not sure why, but we got into a plus 13 Nailtherian's lair. The first boss is dealt with pretty easily. Our Demon Hunter and Mage were in worse gear than mine, but they weren't dying constantly, so honestly it didn't even matter that the damage was a bit low. My damage was pretty good early on, but dropped off as the pulls slowly got smaller and smaller, and since a lot of the mobs in here were dying pretty fast, since it was only a plus 13. I'm doing my best in every run to just be using Stampeding Roar on cooldown to get from pack to pack faster. My solar beam had only a few seconds left before it was on cooldown so that I could stop this stone bolt. I could have used my other abilities to stop it, but I was trying my best to dodge the avalanche and it got me killed. Not too big of a deal though, since it was only our first death. Neuraxis was a little difficult, but it can be made a lot easier if you're using your Ursul's Vortex when the 2 sacrificial mobs will go so that they can get pulled back in and slowed down. We killed the last boss, and once again a pretty smooth dungeon with only 3 deaths. I only gained 6 score though. I did get a helmet I already had, so I gave it to our demon hunter. Our next dungeon might have actually been our best run this week. If you guys remember how Underrot went for us last week, then this is basically the way that that run should have went. This run had alright damage, a good tank, and minimal wipes. I think that was the biggest thing. We were constantly pulling and any deaths were rezzed up and right back into it. The tempo of a dungeon, which is usually set by the tank, is very important. It builds momentum in your DPS players and keeps your healers engaged to keep you guys alive. One of my favorite pulls of the dungeons was this one. As you can see, the failed druid and I are just pumping damage. I had learned from last week that when you're on the third boss, if there were any leftover green mushrooms, that some tanks don't know that they need to be cleared. So I took the incentive and went into bear form to soak one at a time. After this, we went back to the second boss and did it quite well. Everybody was soaking the red grubs, and I know for myself and many other high level raiders, these mechanics and coordination seem trivial and almost expected. For some pugs though, I've learned to always expect the bare minimum, and then you might actually be surprised when people go above that. It was time for the last boss. We were doing alright for 75% of the fight, but then we got bad placement on the frontal, which then split us up. I wasn't able to get my stacks cleansed and I died along with our failed druid. We got it done and a haste heavy ring dropped. This is the same eye level as our current LFR ring, but on the Champions Tract versus Veteran. It was a 2 chest and plus 77 score, so only 120 more to go before Keystone Master. Next up, we have a plus 15 Braconite Hollow. The second pull of the dungeon was a bit of a fumble. I wasn't paying close enough attention and a fixate mob got a little too close to me when I was about half health after I got hit by a earth bolt. As I'm running back, our healer dies and our other 2 DPS fall with no healer to keep them alive. The tank manages to stay alive, but then more earth and bone bolts target me, so I'm dead again. At this point, a patrol had walked into us, and then it got bolstered right as the first pull was dying. This mob then basically one-shot the tank and then our warrior. Surprisingly, the first boss actually went pretty well. The cleave nature of this boss is phenomenal for balanced druid. The next few pulls are actually some of my favorite in this whole dungeon. There are just so many targets, which, as you all know, is where Boomy shines. Our healer used hover here and pulled another pack that was a little bit too much for the tank to handle once it got bolstered. 3 of us died in total. The healer and the mage were able to kite the mob so that they wouldn't reset. Like usual, we dealt with tree mouth and gutshot with no problems at all. A little bit of chaos then ensued, as if this dungeon wasn't chaotic enough so far. We rezzed our healer, who then accidentally jumps off the bridge. Our tank was fine though when I gave him a little bit of off healing. They weren't the only one making mistakes though, as I died right here with frenzied regen off cooldown because I was too focused on healing other people. A few more deaths, but lots of us were getting locked in combat, so I used my shadow meld here and was about to give this person a res when they released. At this point, already being pretty annoyed with this run, our hero then accidentally aggroed the vultures that our tank had opted to skip right before gutshot. With this overall pretty scuffed run finally over, we had amassed nearly 20 deaths. A 1 chest in a plus 15 got us about 17 scores, so we are still getting closer and closer. Can you guys tell that I'm a very forgetful person? I have run Nailthers I don't know how many times, and I still managed to forget to get the remove corruption ability for the last boss fight every single time. The last boss wasn't even our biggest concern in this dungeon anyways. The first pull was interesting and very poorly executed. So our tank tells us at the beginning of the dungeon to wait at the start so that he can do a big pull and then group them all up. He nearly dies doing half of this pull, and then once he gets them all grouped up, he dies. I'm going to save you guys the pain of watching this pull since it leads to basically 2 wipes and 9 deaths. On to the first boss, who I actually had a lot of cooldowns lined up for. Incarnation, the Spoils of Nailthers Mastery buff, and Bloodlust. After the first pull, and just how awkward it was for a bit, after that, I thought for sure that somebody would leave, or that maybe we'd want to try again at a plus 14. But surprisingly, with that kind of out of the way, it was a way better run. A couple deaths to swirlies and frontals, mainly since we had 2 melee DPS and there's not a lot of space to work with. We were now at Forge Master Gorek, and some of you have mentioned in the comments that have not been using Shadow Meld to its fullest potential, and I would have to agree. A cool use for it though on this fight is that when you get targeted with the Blazing Aegis, which puts a orange circle around you and will drop swirlies when it expires, you can avoid it with Shadow Meld. As you can see here, I use Shadow Meld just before the timer tells me that it's going to expire, and no swirlies spawned. We opted to save Lust for the last boss, which I think is the right call. With almost 4.5 minutes to spare, barring a wipe, we should be fine. We only had to deal with 1 Molten Shield. I think our healer actually cleansed the dot off of us anyways, so we didn't need Remove Corruption. We killed the boss with only 0.2 seconds before the second Molten Shield and gained 48 score. This now means that we are at 1945 score, and a cloak that we actually used in the past did drop. I asked for it since both players that got it said that they didn't need it and it might be a super tiny upgrade, and if not, then no harm done. Anyways, our next key is actually my own, a plus 15 Halls of Infusion. I wanted to do Halls as my own key since we have struggled with it in pretty much every single week during this challenge. I decided to assemble the Death Ball comp. This is usually an Augmentation Evoker, a Shadow Priest, a Fire Mage, a Holy Paladin, and a Guardian Druid. Vengeance Demon Hunter and Balance Druid are pretty much the next best options. We got into the run, and from the get-go you can tell that we meant business. Lust on the first pull, and we were at almost 300k DPS. We arrived at the first boss still averaging about 150,000 DPS overall. The only piece of the puzzle that we were missing was our Shadow Priest Power Infusion. If they were to use it on me during these big pulls, along with the Augmentation Evoker's buff, it's just insane how fast packs of mobs can die. Our healer died here because he just went a little too fast ahead of the group and got pretty much assassinated by the stealth mobs. I saw it coming and I even tried to heal him, but I was just a second too late. We actually did a skip here after the second boss that I've never seen or done before. I've mentioned before how dangerous these blue dragons are, and with the use of Mind Soothe we were able to skip one of the packs, but our luck kinda ran out with the second pack that we tried to skip because our priest got meleeed to death. We then lusted this pack and went to town. The third boss, which in previous episodes has led to way too many wipes to count, was done flawlessly, and even the mini boss that led to over 20 deaths in episode 4 was no problem at all. Our healer was really good this dungeon. It was pretty rare that I felt the need to off heal, and he never died, which is very important as a healer. My comfortability during this dungeon on Boomkin might have been my best ever. It was really enjoyable. I feel like I reached my expectations for this series in terms of all the way back in episode 1 when I talked about why I picked Boomkin. The amount of utility this caster has is just ludicrous. Nature's Vigil and off healing to help your team stay alive, a handful of abilities that allow you to affect how mobs interact with your group and each other. Soothe that has a rage effect that you can remove in almost any dungeon in the game. Shapeshifting, which can remove so many different slow effects and help your group avoid certain things. Good defensives that can both be proactive or reactive. With the final boss's health reaching 0, we've done it. We have reached Keystone Wait, what? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. We are 6 Raider.io scores short. With only one more dungeon needed to reach KSM, I think there is no better place to finish off this challenge right than my favorite dungeon from this season of Mythic Plus, the haven for all the slimy, cunning, and thieving pirates that inhabit Tiergard Sound. Freehold. The first pack went really well, with everyone in the group other than the healer averaging at least 200,000 DPS. We quickly ascend the stairs and ready to face the enemies, protecting the first boss. Once again, we would deal with them swiftly, and the first boss meets the exact same fate. There has been times in this series where the second boss was my demise, usually from the sharpshooter Captain Eudora, where I would get a little too greedy for my own good. This time I was unfazed and determined. Pull after pull, we were only getting closer to our goal. Nearly halfway through this dungeon, I could almost taste my reward. A few very close calls during our battle with Torthak, but we played well enough to win the fight. Some of the most dangerous packs in the entire dungeon still laid ahead. These require good positioning and constant interrupts. And finally, after 6 weeks of farming gear, doing LFR, and grinding Mythic Plus, playing with only pugs, it was time to face the singular boss standing in between us and Keystone Master. If we were to wipe here, we would likely deplete this key. We popped Bloodlust and charged into battle. This fight wasn't going to be easy, but we were going to give it our all. As the boss's health got lower and lower, I started to think about how far we had come. Was I truly ready? And had I prepared enough for this fight? We finally did it. I can now say that I took a level 70 balance druid from level 70 all the way to reaching Keystone Master with only pugs. We got a 1 chest on this plus 16 freehold, and on top of that we got a new ring. We are now at 2073 Raider.io score. Oh yeah. I also forgot to mention the one other reward that we got. So, we've achieved Keystone Master, but what happens next? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about my future plans for a bit, and there will be some gameplay footage in the background. It'll be a mix of a plus 17 Braconite that was my own key. This key was an absolute abomination. TLDR, our tank and healer queued up together, and to be completely blunt, I don't think they had any idea what they were doing. The healer let us die numerous times. Our tank seemed lost and just pulled really slow. We wiped 4 or 5 times on the last boss because we couldn't kill the totem. Next, I tried a plus 15 freehold just because I only needed one more dungeon slot to get 3 vault slots for next week, and somebody left before the first boss. I decided to just play it safe and go for a plus 14 underrot. Anyways, my plan currently in regards to this druid is to keep going towards Keystone Hero, which will require us to go even further than my warlock has gone, mainly for the reason that I have pretty much played my warlock for only about an hour or two a week since I started this challenge. Some of that is due to boredom, and some of that was due to lack of effort. Overall, in this challenge, I've learned so much in regards to how balanced druid is played, and if anyone is wondering if I recommend for them to try the Keystone Master challenge, then the answer is 100% yes, especially high-end players. It can really give you a new perspective and requires you to improve, which isn't always necessary in group content. Sometimes if you're surrounded by good players all the time, you can get lazy and complacent. Since you are always playing with new players with pugs, it's quite exciting because you never know if you will have a really good time with an awesome group or wipe to the same mini boss over and over again. I think my current plan is once we finish Keystone Hero, I will do a poll to decide which class you guys want me to do for Season 3. While we're also now done all of our dungeons for the week, I want to upgrade our gear to end off our adventure for today. We're going to try to use all the crest and flight stones we can, just so we compare where we were at the start of the series versus where we're ending it. So I did a few sims, and I believe the best upgrade is to demote some of our worms crest to drake crest to get our gloves upgraded, and then we're also going to upgrade our back. We started off this series at item level 291 right when we hit level 70, and we are ending it at item level 425. Thank you guys very much for watching today's episode. I really appreciate all the support on this series, whether you've been watching since episode 1 or this is your first time ever seeing this series. I really do appreciate all the love and support you guys have given me, and I'm going to do my best to keep the content coming with our journey towards Keystone Hero, and make sure you guys subscribe to join us in our quest for 2,500 Radar.io score. Thank you guys for watching, and good luck with your adventure to Keystone Master.